Malcontent News is a team of journalists, activists, and researchers with three key missions. A commitment to show an unfiltered view of the before, during, and after of key events, live, as it happens. To defend the First Amendment using our rights of a free press. And to amplify the voices of underrepresented individuals including Black, Indigenous, persons of color, and the LGBTQIA+ community. Our team is committed to seeking equality for all and holding those in power accountable. The easiest way to support Malcontent News is to bookmark our website at malcontentnews.com, like and follow us on Facebook, subscribe to us on YouTube, and follow us on Twitter, Twitch, Instagram, and in the Google News app. To provide financial support, you can become a patron, make a one-time donation through Venmo, or link your Twitch account to your Amazon Prime account and use your free subscription to subscribe to Malcontent News. Thank you for supporting independent journalism and for being a malcontent. Good evening, Malcontents. How are you doing? I am David. I'm the Malcontent, and welcome to another episode of Malcontentment Happy Hour. I am joined by not guest co-host or special guest, but with co-host Jennifer Smith. Welcome to the team.
Hey, thank you for having me or letting me stay or not, letting me go away or something. I don't know. Happy to day. I'm still like in workout clothes.
So, Malcontents, we were literally working on this show up to 8 o'clock. So, like, literally, I was like, we're probably going to start a couple of minutes late. I looked, it was 8. I'm like, I'm pushing the button. We're going. And if I'm a little out of breath, that is because I had to go running through the building to go grab my iPad. And run back while the opening video was running. Jennifer, it's a Monday again.
It's another crazy Monday.
It is.
Here we are. Yeah.
I'm like wondering, should we move this to Tuesday because it's a slower news day? Mondays have been insane. And there's a story that we've wanted to do, and we've promoted the story. We've had the story up on our website for a couple of weeks about abusive head trauma. We've talked about it, I think, even before you came on the show. And that poor story keeps getting sandbagged because it's evergreen. But it is an important story, and we will cover it one day. You can go to the website, malcontentnews.com, and you can read about it there. It's been up there, actually. You might have to do a search because it's actually gone so far through.
Yeah. We'll get to it, I swear. But, I was thinking about moving it to Tuesday. I was like, nah. Tomorrow's probably going to be kind of a crazy day with the Georgia elections.
So our first bit of news, Jennifer, I know you've heard about this, but maybe not our audience has, is coming out of Washington, D.C. tonight. There's a lot of news coming out of Washington, D.C. Yeah. This is like how crazy the news cycle is today. Yes, paper notes, because there's stuff we couldn't even get videos teed up for. There's so much going on today. Henry Enrique Tarrio. He got jewelry today. Compliments of the Washington, D.C. authorities. He got stainless steel jewelry today, and he's warming a jail cell. He was initially arrested for destruction of property with a hate crime tag to it. But guess what, Jennifer? He's facing gun charges in Washington, D.C. now because at the time of his arrest, he was in the possession of 2 high-capacity gun magazines, which are illegal in the District of Columbia, and that has gone all the way to the Supreme Court already. So, there is no, you're violating my Second Amendment rights. By the way, Malcontents, I love all the amendments, all 27 of them, including the second. Read into that whatever you want.
Yeah, no, I read that before we went on, but it's interesting to me because of all of like the backlash that's already kind of coming from the far right. Um,
Just
and
going to talk about this.
yeah, and how that potentially could intensify um, violence and protest on the 6th.
They're conveniently forgetting, Jennifer, that he tweeted out, "I did it. Come arrest me."
Yeah, and I apparently he just thought he was above the law because he's far right. I don't know. Like,
Well, there seems to be a lot lately of we are above the law because we're far right. If we want to talk about crying tears about, wait a minute, we're not getting preferential treatment, there was a whole lot of tear crying going on in Salem, Oregon this weekend.
yes, there was, and I've seen a whole lot about that on social media, and people are pretty amused that the Proud Boys and the people that were in Salem, getting their dues from police were upset about the way in which they were being treated.
I don't know what they're thinking, right? It's like if you pepper spray police officers, if you start beating up police officers, aren't the police officers supposed to respond?
Not if you're of a particular political ideology, apparently. Like, I don't know.
I know that a whole lot of the Blue Lives Matter flag, the one with the black and white flag, which
Yeah,
by the way is technically an illegal flag because of what it does to the American flag, but
yeah,
once again, the rules don't apply. And I say technically because really the flag code really is not anything super enforced in the United States as it is. But I heard a lot of these flags got burned this weekend.
yes, I heard that too. And it's, I don't know. I think maybe this is the warm up for the 6th. I don't know. They're like, hey, let's go, mess with some cops, burn some flags, see what happens to us, see if we can handle it. Some kind of like training maneuver. I don't know. Um, Seems a little bit counterintuitive to me, but hey,
So, I mean, the question is, will Enrique be released by the 6th, right? There isn't enough there to say hold him without bail.
yeah,
They could certainly go. They may try. I could see them potentially trying to argue he is a flight risk, and
yes.
and they would have to extradite him back and put a hefty bail requirement on him. But I
Mhm.
would suspect that any hefty bail requirement would magically disappear with a very fast moving GoFundMe
Yeah,
and money from unknown sources.
yes, got to support those patriots. Um, yeah, and it's particularly interesting that he's being arrested at this moment in time. And I wonder if part of that maybe has to do with an effort to kind of quash some of the momentum of that protest, but that may potentially backfire. I worry that he's going to become a bit of a martyr if he's still in jail during these particular protests, and people are going to use that to justify being more violent than they initially might have been.
Well, the right wing chatter, right, on the dark web and in Telegram, the right wing chatter is I haven't seen it at this. Well, I can't say I haven't seen it at this level of volume. I've seen it at this level of volume, like at the height of the Black Lives Matter protests, like
Yeah.
early June, and like right after the election.
Mhm.
If we use those for proxies, it still then doesn't necessarily mean that a whole bunch of people are going to show up.
Exactly.
One of the things that we had put on our Twitter feed is, they're claiming 1.5 million people are coming. That's what I hear their claims are, Jennifer. I went and did a search on Trivago
Yeah.
for hotel rooms in Washington D.C.
Yeah.
from January 5th to January 7th.
Mhm.
Because if 1.5 million people are coming to Washington D.C., there's going to be a hotel room for 200 miles around that city.
Yeah.
And there were 3,700 plus hotels, not rooms, 3,700 plus hotels with rooms in the Washington, D.C. metro area. And I had no idea there were 3,700 hotels in the Washington, D.C. metro area.
But I wonder if they're like inflating these numbers like they inflated his inauguration numbers. So maybe that's how they're doing their calculations.
I don't know. Well, it was very funny when they had their last march, right? They were spreading misinformation, taking pictures from this 2018 march, which was basically when I say a guns right march, it's a sensible guns right march on like, hey, maybe mentally ill people shouldn't own guns march.
Yeah. No, I saw those pictures too, and it was pretty. Like, I don't understand the end game of that. Like, because eventually you're going to get called out, and then it's going to turn into this whole, I don't know, spin it into fake news cycle, which it did anyways. So maybe that's just the MO to start some drama. But yeah, I don't potentially see 1.5 million people showing up for that particular, largest rally in U.S. history, featuring the My Pillow guy.
The My Pillow guy.
Right. When you can't find anybody to fill your speaking positions, you resort to a pillow expert.
Hey, if you were at the Trump New Year's Eve party that he bailed on because he didn't want to be a loser around all those people, you could have hung with Vanilla Ice.
Oh my God. That would have been like my 13-year-old dream. Now it makes me gay.
Roll in my 5.0 with my rag top down so my hair can blow.
Oh, no.
All right, and on that note, I think we're actually going to go to our first. What's that? Oh, yes. Oh, my goodness. Yes. And on that note, Jennifer, land acknowledgement.
Yes, Malcontent News would like to acknowledge the Coast Salish peoples of this land, the land which touches the shared waters of all tribes and bands within the Suquamish, Tulalip, and Muckleshoot nations. We acknowledge the people, past, present, and future, of the Duwamish tribe, the Muckleshoot tribe, and other tribes on whose traditional lands we live and work. So thank you for letting me do that. I thought I would get it out before it's a little bit too late.
And we need to I need to have like another little intro video or something, right? There's a land acknowledgement button. Yeah. Or we need to get rid of COVID in the next 3 days, and I can have an engineer in here again to push the buttons for us and have somebody holding up a whiteboard going, dude, land acknowledgement. Right?
Yeah.
Exactly. Okay, now we're going to go to story number 1, which is technically story number 2, because that's how we roll. Wow, Jennifer. A lot's happened in the last 72 hours. I mean, it's never a dull moment with Cheeto Jesus. I'm sorry, that was very unprofessional of me, of our president, Lord, Overlord, Donald Trump.
Yeah. He made a really interesting phone call to Georgia the other day that makes Nixon look a little bit almost saint-like.
Nixon's in hell right now going, you don't have old Ricky Dick to kick around anymore.
Yeah. It was pretty intense. At times I was like, I think he's going to break down and cry. But he's basically trying to bully Georgia into reevaluating and finding. You could just recalculate your votes. It's fine. Finding almost 12,000 votes so he can have the state. And he's just kind of going on this, we have the clip, but he's just kind of going on this like nonsensical tirade and getting more and more desperate as the time goes on. But I think now would be an interesting time if we have that to roll, and then we can talk about it a little bit.
Yeah. So what we have before that, Jennifer, is that a certain senator named Ted Cruz, before this tape came out, kind of has stepped on a huge landmine and
It does.
12 other senators or 11 other senators plunged over the cliff with him. And I think it's worth noting that Tom Cotton at least was, look, we'll give Tom Cotton this inch of credit that he woke up this morning and goes, yeah, no, like I heard the tape and no.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's Ted Cruz is, I don't even know where he was going with that. And then he starts trying to draw from, this like misinterpretation of the 1876 election with Hayes and Tilden and the commission that came as a result of that. So I know we have a clip for that. Maybe
we're gonna roll that, and then we can talk about that, and then we're gonna play 4 minutes and 31 seconds of pure insanity.
A new band of Trump loyalists, 11 Republican senators, current and incoming, deliver a controversial ultimatum.
Voter fraud is a real problem.
Led by Texas Senator Ted Cruz, the group says they will object to Joe Biden's Electoral College victory unless Congress creates a new electoral commission to conduct an emergency 10-day audit of the election returns. Wednesday, Congress will carry out the tradition of certifying the Electoral College results state by state. Missouri Republican Senator Josh Hawley and a group of House Republicans had already announced plans to object. The president tweeted praise. After they see the facts, plenty more to come. Our country will love them for it.
They rigged our presidential election, but we will still win it. We will still win it.
But Democrats call it dangerously unpatriotic.
This is undemocratic, it's un-American, but fortunately for all of us, it will be unsuccessful.
With his Twitter megaphone, President Trump is inviting his supporters to march in Washington Wednesday. But other Republicans are coming forward to defy the Cruz game plan, to say they will uphold Biden's victory. The Biden transition responded that allegations of fraud were examined and dismissed by Trump's own attorney general, dozens of courts, and election officials from both parties. And Saturday night, a federal appeals court delivered a blow to some of these efforts, tossing out a case raised by Texas Congressman Louis Gohmert that had been suing Vice President Pence in order to compel him to make changes during the Electoral College count to toss out some states enough to flip the election to President Trump.
Y'all can't hear me. There you go. The reason I was laughing earlier is that Jennifer knows that I have a little bit of a secret going on related to, I don't want to, raffle's not the right word, but to our patron thing. And so there may be a few seconds of black air whenever the videos end in the first half of the show. Quite frankly, I am cutting up the strips that have the names on it for the drawing. This is what I mean by we were just like right to the wall on production. Jennifer, this is all you. Unpack this for us.
So you have these Cruz and company, they're trying to establish this emergency commission in order to have this emergency evaluation or reevaluation of the election. So Cruz, in that video I sent you earlier, was talking about the historical precedent for this, and they had cited this too in their primary statement when they came out and decided they were going to do this based on the 1876 U.S. presidential election, which saw Republican Rutherford B. Hayes faced Samuel Tilden, and it was a very disputed election. There was actually, I have dogs coming into the room, sorry. There were 4 states that were really contested and undecided, and so they developed an election commission. This commission met 15 times and ultimately came to this compromise in 1877, where in exchange for ending the Reconstruction era in the South and moving troops out of the South, they awarded Hayes the presidency. So what this really did was brought an end to Reconstruction, which was meant to integrate newly freed Black peoples into Southern society and provide them with particular rights that came from constitutional amendments post-Civil War. But what actually it did was negated all of those gains that were made. And then 2 decades later, we see the decision come down in the Supreme Court with Plessy v. Ferguson, which actually, was the beginning of the Jim Crow era. So this whole kind of idea of contestation and overturning elections is really intensely problematic. They kind of came to this compromise and basically said, if you do this, we'll give you this. That's not something that's going to potentially happen here. And before anybody says, oh, those Dems, they're always cheating because there was, claims of voter fraud and suppression and intimidation on behalf of Hayes supporters, we have to remember that party ideologies flipped in the 20th century. Look up the Southern strategy when, Southern Republicans, who were at the time Democrat by ideology, decided it was in their best interest to really go against uphold this kind of idea that race really mattered in the South and side with those who believed in Jim Crow and ongoing segregation. And so the parties actually flipped ideologically. So what's going on here in this idea of historical precedent, it is not the same situation at all. This is not going to gain any traction. It's just going to make them look even more foolish than they already are. And it's a total political stunt. But that is what they're actually basing it off.
They don't have the vote, right? They don't have the votes in the House. They're not going to have the votes in the Senate, right? Because there's enough Republican Senate. I mean, so first of all, there's an empty seat. There's only 99 senators as of yesterday because Perdue is no longer a senator, right? They have the runoff election in Georgia tomorrow. So the balance of power now is 47-49. We know Murkowski is like over my dead body. We know Mittens is over my dead body. So now you're to 47-47. And we know that Tom Cotton is over my dead body. So there you go. It's dead, right? Even if they got all the other Republicans to support. I'm not convinced that McConnell isn't going to support. It all depends on what benefits Mitch McConnell, because that's how Mitch McConnell operates.
No, exactly. And I just think it's such a problematic thing to even do when it's not going to have any significant change. And what's happening right now is just going to throw more fuel onto the fire that we don't actually need. It's a political stunt. There's no compromise to be had here like there was when people were really wanting to end that Reconstruction era in the South. We don't have that kind of thing to put on the line, this kind of compromise. And that's wholly problematic anyways. So I don't know what they're trying to do other than pander to a really fragile, outgoing president.
And Congressman Coy out of Texas, 21st District, he did something very interesting on Sunday because he was an outgoing Republican congressman. I believe that he served Ted Cruz. He was Ted Cruz's chief of staff at one point of time. And Coy basically said that the Congress people from, is that the correct term now? It feels weird, Congress people? I know, because congressman's not right, but is it congresspersons, Congress peoples?
Let's just go with Congress people. I think
Congress people, that the Congress people from these 6 disputed states should not be seated. And his argument is, if you're saying that the presidential election was a fraud, but then nothing down ballot was, you're friggin' hypocrites.
Yeah.
And so you should just throw all the elections out, dear Congress peoples, including you that are coming in on your first day of work here in a few minutes as I go on my last day of work here.
Yeah, no, exactly. And I'm sure that didn't make him any friends, but it's the whole, people aren't going to want to buy into that logic, which it is. It's logical. How can you contest one portion of the election ballot, but not the rest? So yeah, this whole kind of political theater that's going on right now. And, Cruz is like, oh, it's so divisive in the country right now. We need to uphold, integrity and democracy. Well, you're stoking that division by, enacting this political theater. So I don't want to hear any more from Ted Cruz. But interestingly, one of the big newspapers in Dallas called him out for his misinterpretation of history. And we've been talking about Texas recently, based on what happened with the prosecution of the police officer and how weird it is that Texas is kind of coming forward and doing these things that we don't expect from Texas. So I thought that was particularly interesting.
Something I want to tie into this, and then we're going to roll that Trump clip because I have to cut more slips of paper, is when I was in school and I was taught about the Reconstruction era as a young lad, I was taught that the Reconstruction era was very bad for the South, and that the Democrat, aka Republicans, and the Yankees treated them very, very badly vis-a-vis the carpetbaggers and ripping people off and all of these oppressive changes and living in a military occupation. This is just systemic racism being taught in our schools, and now I'm in a place where I can look at it and go, those lessons were complete bullshit.
Absolutely. And I teach Reconstruction in several of my classes, and I urge anybody to read. I mean, I'm not going to tell you to read all of Black Reconstruction by W.B. Du Bois, but read the chapter called Propaganda of History. I have a PDF. I will share it with you. It is fantastic. And he breaks down why Reconstruction, even in the early 20th century, was taught the way that it is. And it was taught that it was a failure of Black people to integrate into Southern society, which wasn't the case at all.
Right.
So, for anybody watching out there, if you're interested in Reconstruction, I highly recommend that chapter. I will give you guys the PDF copy of it. It's a really informative, fundamental read if you're interested in the Reconstruction era.
Jennifer, if you get me that PDF when we do the slice and dice and post these up on the Malcontent News website, when we go with this segment, we can attach it to that segment.
All right, awesome.
And with that, we're going to move to the next clip, which is Donald Trump had an interesting phone call. He's probably had 6 interesting phone calls, is what we can conclude here, not just Georgia, because Georgia is, in the big scheme of things, inconsequential. Right? Yep. If you flipped Georgia, which is the most, if we look at the margin of victory, that would be the most flippable state. If you flip Georgia, it doesn't change anything.
No. What's interesting, though, as I was reading today, he tried 18 times to get these people on the phone before they actually took his phone call.
And as we know, Arizona, right? Because we know that from a couple of weeks ago, right? Arizona was like, yeah, we're not taking your phone call. And he was just royally pissed about it and tweeted about it. So Arizona apparently, we'll give some credit to Arizona because it just sounds like it was like, I have the president for the 32nd time.
Yeah, he's like that guy you try to friend zone that won't go away. I'm just
I'm so glad I don't have to deal with that shit anymore. And on that happy note, we're going to roll because what happened was they recorded the phone calls in Georgia, and they recorded it as an insurance policy in case Trump went to throw them under the bus. And apparently they told them they were being recorded, and they told them that if you misrepresent this call, we're going to go ahead and share the call.
Yeah, and they did.
Okay, we're rolling the tape.
We have won this election in Georgia based on all of this. And there's nothing wrong with saying that, Brad. I mean, having a correct, the people of Georgia are angry. And these numbers are going to be repeated on Monday night, along with others that we're going to have by that time, which are much more substantial even. And the people of Georgia are angry. The people of the country are angry. And there's nothing wrong with saying that, that you've recalculated.
Well, Mr. President, the challenge that you have is the data you have is wrong.
Now, do you think it's possible that they shredded ballots in Fulton County? Because that's what the rumor is. And also that Dominion took out machines. That Dominion is really moving fast to get rid of their machinery. Do you know anything about that? Because that's illegal.
This is Ryan, Germany. No, Dominion has not moved any machinery out of Fulton County. Wewe're having.
Well, but have they moved? have they moved the inner parts of the machines and replaced them with other parts?
No,
You sure, Ryan?
I'm sure.
You should want to have an accurate election. And you're a Republican.
We believe that we do have an accurate election.
No, you don't. No, you don't. You don't have, not even close. You're off by hundreds of thousands of votes. You know what they did, and you're not reporting it. That's a criminal offense, and you can't let that happen. That's a big risk to you and to Ryan, your lawyer. That's a big risk. But they are shredding ballots, in my opinion, based on what I've heard, and they are removing machinery, and they're moving it as fast as they can. Both of which are criminal fines, and you can't let it happen, and you are letting it happen. I'm notifying you that you're letting it happen. So, look, all I want to do is this. I just want to find 11,780 votes, which is one more than we have, because we won the state. So tell me, Brad, what are we going to do? We won the election, and it's not fair to take it away from us like this. And it's going to be very costly in many ways. And I think you have to say that you're going to re-examine it, and you can re-examine it, but re-examine it with people that want to find answers, not people that don't want to find answers. For instance, I'm hearing Ryan, and he's probably, I'm sure, a great lawyer and everything, but he's making statements about those ballots that he doesn't know. But he's making them with he did make them with surety, but now I think he's less sure, because the answer is they all went to Biden. And that alone wins us the election by a lot. So.
Mr. President, you have people that submit information, and we have our people that submit information, and then it comes before the court, and the court then has to make a determination. We have to stand by our numbers. We believe our numbers are right.
Well, under law, you're not allowed to give faulty election results, okay? You're not allowed to do that, and that's what you've done. This is a faulty election result. And honestly, this should go very fast. You should meet tomorrow, because you have a big election coming up, and because of what you've done to the president, the people of Georgia know that this was a scam. And because of what you've done to the president, a lot of people aren't going out to vote. And a lot of Republicans are going to vote negative because they hate what you did to the president. Okay? They hate it. And they're going to vote. And if you would be respected, if this thing could be straightened out before the election. You have a big election coming up on Tuesday.
Yes. Hello. I would like to talk to my bank, please. Yeah. 2568. Wilson. Yeah, the reason I'm calling is, are you sure that my balance is right? Because I think it's missing $11,780, and I think you've counted it wrong. Are you sure? Well, I heard that you guys were shredding dollar bills. I read it on the internet, so it must be true. And I think you shredded my $11,780 bills. I would really appreciate it if maybe you could just recalculate. Hello? Hello? Hello?
Oh, goodness.
Jennifer, they hung up.
Even my dog thinks that's crazy. Yeah, there's no problem recalculating. That nobody's going to be mad if you recalculate. The people of Georgia are really upset. We heard this thing about Dominion. That entire thing was just insane. I was telling somebody yesterday, I may have told this to you guys as well during our meeting, like my mouth was open the entire time. That was like the most brazen. I mean, there's a meme around right now that says, Trump's phone call was like, told Nixon, here, hold my beer. Like, and thinking about like the Nixon tapes, the thing that, ultimately led to his resignation, the smoking gun. what more of a smoking gun do you need than that? I mean, it's all there on tape. He's literally pressuring them to change the numbers on the election and to find almost 12,000 votes.
The really fascinating thing to here is that, in theory, a self-pardon wouldn't save him if the state of Georgia were to move to prosecute him for some kind of voter malfeasance in the state of Georgia.
Oh, I think he's, probably got New York is on him for other reasons. And I think that's probably part of the reason he's so desperate to stay in power, is because he knows he's going to be in trouble once he leaves office and he no longer has that protection, right?
Right.
And I feel like potentially there may be pressure on Biden to pardon him, like what happened with Nixon and Ford. This man, his behavior is so nefarious, and egregious and just blatantly awful. I don't understand how that would even be something that could cross someone's mind, other than to try and potentially reunify people. But I don't think at this point that's necessarily something that's even going to be solved by that. But just thinking about this in comparison to the Watergate scandal is pretty interesting. 72 is when they kind of came out with that, and 74 is when Nixon resigned, and there was this whole kind of, Saturday Night Massacre in between. Right. All these other things that went down, Supreme Court rulings, kind of, forcing him the erasure of tapes and forcing him to, turn over those tapes. But this is it's blatant. It's right there. We don't even have to go to any of those steps. It came out for everybody to hear, immediately.
The thing that's fascinating with the Nixon Watergate scandal is a number of people that were involved, either reporting the story, prosecuting the story, constitutional lawyers who reviewed the cases, they're still alive. And they are all collectively shitting their pants today.
Yes. Can you imagine Woodward and Bernstein, what they're thinking right now? They're the ones that really broke that story. And then when he was going through, the impeachment and the whole Russia investigation and all that stuff, they were kind of weighing in on that. But this is the equivalent to the smoking gun. This guy is, openly trying to commit election fraud.
It's either that, or he's openly so easily manipulated that it's terrifying to the level that he could be manipulated.
I think he's desperate. Maybe it's a combination of multiple things going on at the same time, but I am so concerned of what he's going to do after he is finally removed from office, in the context of are the nation's secrets safe with this man? That's my concern.
And that's one of my concerns too. One thing that was interesting this weekend, where you and I chatted about this, is on Twitter this weekend, Linwood and Crenshaw were trending, and that caught my eye, right? Because I'm like, when I see Linwood trending, I'm to the point I don't even look, because it's just oh, what batshit crazy now. But when Linwood and Crenshaw was trending, I was like, because what I was expecting was the human chin with an eye patch, gosh darn it, Phil Ken Ben 7 from Harvey Birdman. It's kind of what he reminds me of, only a little more buff and macho than Phil Ken 7 was. But look it up, Harvey Birdman, attorney at law, if you don't know what the hell I'm talking about. Millennials will totally get this. And they'll be like, okay, he's a cool Gen X. He watched Adult Swim. Crenshaw is getting crucified by the political right. He's out. He's dead to them because he questioned Linwood and called him a grifter.
Yeah. Well, God, isn't it sad to agree with Crenshaw? He's
on anything.
Yeah. There's the factions that are developing on both sides are kind of, I don't know, alarming. More so on the right than the left, just because I don't have an issue with socialism and things.
Right.
So, but just the desperation old white men have to stay in positions of power, like, is just mind-boggling to me. And it's interesting because, like, we talk about this in the context of academia a lot, like this kind of older generation of historians who are really, pro-patriotism. We still have like this generation who still wants to like laud Andrew Jackson for his accomplishments, and the rest of us are like, oh my God, no. We call them dinosaurs. And eventually they're going to go by the wayside, but they go out kicking and screaming. And that's exactly what's going to happen with this sector of men who are just so desperate to pander to whoever is popular at the moment, or whatever position is popular at the moment, to the detriment of their constituents.
I think we could probably talk about this all night, but we have other stories that we have to get to. And there's a lot to unpack. I will tell you this, Malcontent. If the American Civil War starts on the 6th, we will air it. We'll figure something out, and we'll do a live cast. Or if insanity is broken out here in Seattle, I'll be out in the full riot bag and all that other stuff with pole cam, and hoping I come home in one piece at night. And that's kind of what the plan is at this point. So stay tuned for that. And with that, we're going to roll our first spot.
George Floyd! Initially kind of came in and, said, hey, we're going to have to start moving people. And then a couple other people came in and we were like...
to be held accountable for their actions. We're not going without. No justice, no peace. No justice, no peace. No justice, no peace.
Can You Hear Us is a documentary that is being developed by Malcontent News. We've compiled, or actually not compiled, we went through almost 200 hours of audio, video, live stream, and hundreds of still images to put together this documentary that covers the events from June 1 up through July 4. And we will be making that available in February of 2021. But if you're a patron, you will have access to Can You Hear Us in January of 2021. And we'll talk a little bit more later about how you can become a patron. And that will be it for any level for patrons. So don't worry if you're like, you don't have the money or you don't want to, you'll get access to it. But if you want early access to it, you can get early access to it by becoming a patron. And with that, Jennifer, I'm going to roll the intro for story number 2.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a mess. It's like a total mess. And there has been a number of news items that have come out in the last 48 hours related to COVID, and just none of it is good. And with that, Jennifer, what I'd like to do is roll our first clip, if you're cool with that, and then we can unpack it a little bit.
Well, the new year is bringing new fears about the coronavirus. Right now, one American is dying from COVID about every 30 seconds. A new variant of the virus spreading in Britain and dozens of countries has now infected people in Colorado, California, Florida, and we learned today, New York. Hospitalizations are at an all-time high, with 125,000 Americans being treated in COVID wards. Another 70,000 are projected to die in this country before the presidential inauguration in 16 days. We get more now from CBS's Jonathan Vigliotti.
Southern California hospitals are so overwhelmed, one doctor calls it World War III. The emotional toll off the charts.
This is the worst medical disaster that I've seen in over 30 years of practicing in emergency medicine.
Los Angeles County now averaging 133 deaths a day. It was 25 on Thanksgiving. Bodies now stored in refrigerated trucks.
We're losing on average a person every 15 minutes.
And cases skyrocketing, over 800,000 since the pandemic began, nearly half of those since December 1st. Tonight, the first confirmed case in New York of that variant strain from the UK, at least 50% more contagious. The Saratoga County resident had no known travel history. California today seeing at least 5 more cases of that strain amid concerns of a wider U.S. spread. Tonight, British Prime Minister Boris Johnson extended his nation's lockdown through mid-February.
And it's been both frustrating and alarming to see the speed with which the new variant is spreading.
The virus also spreading quickly among some major U.S. retailers, including 174 employees of this Washington State Costco store who tested positive. But even as cases and hospitalizations keep soaring, more Americans packed airports on Sunday than on any single day since the pandemic began.
I don't want to let COVID kind of stop us from enjoying life or having something to look forward to.
Health officials now fear a crushing Christmas and New Year's surge with thousands of more deaths and more grieving family members like those of Millie Rivera, who would have turned 55 this month. Her sister wrote, "I watched you through the glass door. It broke my heart to not be able to be there. This is so unbelievable and not right." And Rivera had 9 grandchildren. Tonight across Los Angeles, long lines as people wait to get tested. Nowhere longer than here at Dodger Stadium. More than 13,000 people getting tested every single day with wait times up to 5 hours long. Nora?
Incredible to see those lines. Jonathan Vigliotti, thank you.
And preventable. Not completely preventable, but to the scale preventable.
Yeah. Yeah. It's our staggering numbers.
77,500 Americans died in the month of December from COVID. And if you remember, Jennifer, there was this meme that came out about the deadliest day, and then I created all of this angst and when these numbers aren't right, and we did a write up of Malcontent News. Where we broke it down, and there was, in our view, a lot of mistakes in that. But something that the minimizers, I don't want to call them deniers, but the minimizers, I guess, it's just the flu crowd. It's like, there's more people that died in the 1918 pandemic in a day than any of those days listed there, right? And then you're like, well, give me the daily data. Nobody can give you the daily data because they didn't keep daily data. It goes, well, but if you extrapolate the months, it was 650,000. It was over 18 months. And so blah, blah, blah. And so any of those 77,500 just about crushes any month of the 1918 pandemic. And the worst forecast is for January, where the forecast is 150,000 Americans, which will beat any month of the 1918 pandemic any way that you can slice it, despite our medicine, despite everything we have.
Yeah, and why do you think we're going to have such a rapid increase in January?
And how many people in the 1918 pandemic were attributed to dying from the pandemic that potentially died of something else because they did not have gene sequencing. They did not have all of these testing. They didn't know what the hell a virus was.
Yeah, well, yeah, again, they're not keeping accurate data. We're also part of the pandemic is coming at wartime, so there's all of these different factors. But I will say, we talked a little bit about the 1918 pandemic and masking and things like that. If you look back at the ways in which it was enforced and people actually followed those guidelines, they were better about it than we are now.
They had goon squads. You walked around without a mask, you'd get your ass kicked and thrown in jail. You would literally get beaten and thrown in jail if you weren't wearing a mask.
Some people actually masked their pets. I have pictures.
Yes, they did.
Yeah. People were scared. And, the thing was, it was in fact, largely affecting younger people in their 30s that were, they determined to be otherwise healthy. And so, the minimizers, again, we've talked about this before, have basically been like, oh, it's, it's an old person's illness. It's people with underlying conditions. And, we're learning now that it's starting to impact younger, healthier people.
And it may be impacting a lot more healthier, younger people in the months to come. And we have that a little bit later, and that clip is coming up. I'm going to roll, in the interest of just keeping it moving, I'm going to roll the next clip, if you're okay with that.
The whole United Kingdom has been engaged in a great national effort to fight COVID. And there's no doubt that in fighting the old variant of the virus, our collective efforts were working and would have continued to work. But we now have a new variant of the virus. This new variant is between 50 and 70% more transmissible. That means you're much, much more likely to catch the virus and to pass it on. With most of the country already under extreme measures, it's clear that we need to do more together to bring this new variant under control while our vaccines are rolled out. In England, we must therefore go into a national lockdown which is tough enough to contain this variant. That means the government is once again instructing you to stay at home. You may only leave home for limited reasons permitted in law, such as to shop for essentials, to work if you absolutely cannot work from home, to exercise, to seek medical assistance, such as getting a COVID test, or to escape domestic abuse. The full details of what you can and can't do will be available at gov.uk/coronavirus.
The calm British demeanor just makes these kind of things seem so dystopian.
Yes. Absolutely. I would just like to note, if you hear any snoring in the background, that is not me. I have a pug under my chair, so Chihuahua in my lap, pug under my chair. It's I don't know. Maybe it helps to kind of diminish any sense of panic. I think people in the UK should be panicking. Definitely very monotone, very calm. What's interesting though is, with Johnson was a denier early on, right? And they had that we're going to go for the herd immunity thing. And clearly that didn't pan out. And then he got really, really ill with COVID and then was like, oh, this isn't a hoax. It's interesting how much they're not interesting, but it's alarming how much they're really struggling now and how, they're having to take these really drastic measures.
Yes. And the reason that they're taking these drastic measures is twofold. The first one is that the variant that's erupted in the UK, as they said, is 50 to 70% more contagious. It, however, is not any more virulent. So it appears doesn't have worse intensity. It is just the same coronavirus we basically have here in the United States, but the version, that is a lot more contagious. So if we're at, if we were at above flu, like now we're approaching something that's like as contagious as mumps, which is super contagious.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, it's interesting too, and I can't remember if that video talks about it or not, but they put Scotland on a national lockdown too.
Yep. Yes, and that's a very key thing to mention there. Another thing that ties into this that is really alarming are these cases of the British variant that are being identified in the United States. None, not one of these cases are people that traveled, which means they've picked it up through community spread.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And what are there? California, Colorado,
New York.
Yes.
So, 3 states now.
Again, we're going to be facing round 64 of the coronavirus spread. I just don't know how at this point we get it across to people that we need to be more diligent. People need to be diligent about masking, about washing your hands, about social distancing and limiting who you're having contact with. Because, we talked about this, I think last week, about how slow and how poor the vaccine rollout has been. and how long it's going to take to establish herd immunity so we can have lives again. And at this point, it's not looking promising.
It's not looking promising, and there is even more disheartening news that's come out of South Africa. And with that, I'm going to roll the clip.
I'm very worried about the new South African variant that we've seen, and that's why we've taken the very robust action to stop flights from South Africa. And my concern is that it seems to be even more easy to transmit than the new variant that we've seen here. And obviously, it's been a huge challenge controlling the new variant that we've seen in the UK. Now, thankfully, there isn't evidence of very much spread of the South African variant here. We've seen 2 cases, but we haven't seen any further cases since then. But we've got to keep an eagle eye on this one because it is even harder to deal with than the UK variant.
And the other thing that's coming out of South Africa is this is targeting younger adults.
Yeah, I know. And, you think about how much of a hub like places like Johannesburg are for travel, and how many, planes from different countries are going in and out of there, at least, were. How far has that been spread so far? And how long before it reaches the United States? And we are so unequipped to handle that at this particular moment. I don't want to think about the potential consequences of that.
And there's another bit of bad news that's come out of this from Sir John Bell out of Canada, who was one of the lead researchers that came up with the AstraZeneca vaccination for COVID-19. And what Sir John Bell has said is he has grave concerns that the current vaccine will work against the South African variant, because the South African variant has very different protein spikes from the other existing variants that are in the wild. And I'm out of my pay grade if I talk at a level any higher than what I just talked about.
Yeah, well, that's what they're worried about, and like antibiotic resistance or vaccine resistance it's when the proteins start to change. And then you have to, if the proteins are changing and the current vaccine is not going to be effective, then they're going to have to go through the process of developing one that is. And that's how long is that going to take? So yeah, there's a whole lot of bad news on the COVID front. Yeah.
The last thing that jumped out at me in that clip that we played with Nora O'Donnell was the woman at the airport, who was like, I just want to live. And I'm like,
don't we all? But
look, if you just want to live, why don't you just go jump out of an airplane with a parachute on or something, right? If you want to take some wild ass risk. Yeah. I know I don't want to take my idea of taking a wild ass risk is not having to climb into an airplane bathroom on a commercial flight, during the age of COVID. I would rather jump out of an airplane.
Yeah, no, exactly. So I don't know. People, I think we have to get people to cooperate if we're ever going to get past this. And that is not promising at the moment, because there's so many people who are just want to live or, want to be patriots and are concerned about, the imposition of wearing a mask and, their civil liberties and all these other things that it's just become too much, I think.
Or you have Q followers in positions of science who believe things like the vaccine is going to alter your DNA. Now, I didn't, I railed against having to take biology class as a business major, but I do know enough about reading about gene therapy that in order to alter someone's DNA, you have to customize whatever that particular drug is to their specific DNA. Idiots.
The pharmacist might know that, but...
And with that, let's roll that clip.
Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us. The pharmacist accused of deliberately spoiling COVID-19 vaccines is now out of jail this afternoon.
Yeah, he was released on a $10,000 signature bond after questions arose whether those vaccines were actually destroyed.
Mary Jo Ola is now live in the Ozaukee County Justice Center in Port Washington to explain.
Shannon, pharmacist Stephen Brandenburg is not criminally charged as of today. The district attorney in Ozaki County says more testing of the vaccine vials is needed to determine if the case will move forward. Now, you should be seeing some video now of Brandenburg leaving the Ozaki County jail this afternoon, just a couple hours after he appeared over Zoom for a bail hearing earlier today. Now, Brandenburg was being held in the Ozaki County jail on probable cause. And according to the probable cause statement, Brandenburg admitted he is a conspiracy theorist and said he did not believe the COVID-19 vaccine was safe and intentionally removed the vaccines from required refrigeration. During today's hearing, the Ozaki County District Attorney revealed the hospital walked back some of their initial information that vaccines were destroyed. The DA is having the vials tested to determine what charges Brandenburg may ultimately face.
Apparently, the only way they can discover that or tell us that is if they test them. It's unknown how much time it will take. Fortunately, we have them such that some of them or all of them can be returned to Moderna for that testing.
Now, depending on what the tests show will determine how severe those charges could be. Now, the DA, again, is having those vaccines tested. He says if the vaccines are still useful, Brandenburg could face a misdemeanor. The DA also adds that he's working closely with the U.S. State's Attorney. Again, the timeline for that testing is unknown, but this case is set for a status hearing January 19th. Reporting live in Ozaki County, Mary Jo Ola, TMJ4 News.
Mary Jo, thank you.
Yes, Mary Jo, thank you. Back to you in the studio, Jennifer.
That's insane to me. That's whole kind of like, first off, I mean, where does he feel like he has the knowledge to make that kind of determination about the safety of a vaccine? Yeah, I don't know. Crazy.
And then you just have to wonder, he got caught.
Yeah.
How many out there and they're not getting caught? And then how many people out there are going to think they were vaccinated when maybe they weren't?
Exactly. And then we're back to square one yet again.
I'm like, what happened?
Yeah. Back to that online radicalization again.
Because the argument isn't autism anymore, right? I mean, you're not hearing that about vaccinations, right? And now it's just, it's this Falun Epoch Times Q BS.
Yeah, it's microchipping, it's, restructuring of DNA, it's all kinds of crazy things that could only be found in those particular venues. And conspiracy theories. I don't even know how you get past that. But again, you're right. I mean, how many people haven't been caught? How many people are potentially thinking they're safe or had their second rounds of vaccines and, waited the 14 days and did what they thought was right, only to eventually find out that, they're not.
Exactly. I don't know about you, but I ain't going to let them microchip me. I'm just going to walk around with my cell phone in my pocket with my GPS tracker and my Wi-Fi and not my 5G, because 5G boils your brain. I got the 4G, because the 4G okay, and the Bluetooth, and the government listened to me because I use Siri.
Yeah,
but they ain't going to put no microchip in my head, damn it. And make America great. Don't buy anything from China, except an iPhone.
Exactly. Have to have one.
And with that, I think we're going to roll our next commercial.
Okay.
Autumn come, oh, leaves fall down on me. I've waited so very long, try to speak my mind, but no one knows the language. So I push it to the side. Music has a power greater than words can really express. Songbird, sing a song to me. Let me know where I'm supposed to be. It's such a shame, yeah. Well, I was your TV girl. The EP is called Blue, and my website is classicelishamusic.com.
I was actually just grooving to the music, and then it stopped, and I was like, I gotta hit a button.
I was like, oh God, I just love listening to that commercial every time it comes on.
What's that again?
I love listening to that commercial every time it comes on.
And I do too. The other thing is I love the visuals now, right? Because that was August in Seattle, and it was a very socially distanced event, as you could see, and the weather it was cold, but it was nice, and yeah. If you were grooving out to that music too, and you're thinking, I really want David to play that commercial again, I got a better solution. You can go to the website, classicelijahmusic.com, and there you can either link to Bandcamp or iTunes if you are an iPhone user, and at least not an ironic iPhone user going Make America Great and sending that on your iPhone. And if you are one of those people and you still watch our show, we really appreciate you for watching, honestly. With that said, you can go just to iTunes if you're not, it's a button push, and you can just actually just download Blue. It's $13. If you get the CD, it's $15. You get a bonus track. Wonderful woman, voice of an angel. The music comes from her heart, and you can really tell the music comes from her heart, and you can tell in that performance. It was an honor and a privilege to be able to document and film her concert back in August, and I'm thrilled that she allows us to play her music. And with that, I'm going to roll story number 3. Jennifer, we've been at this for an hour, so we're already over time again. So I'm just going to jump into the clip if you're okay with that.
Go ahead.
This year, King County plans to buy as many as a dozen hotels throughout the county and convert them into shelters with permanent housing and services. That plan could run into hurdles in cities like SeaTac. Here's why.
Last year, during the opening weeks of the COVID pandemic, King County took swift action and moved homeless people out of crowded shelters and into this SeaTac Quality Inn, where they'd have their own rooms and would be less likely to spread the virus.
We were in a position where we were literally counting hours and days, wondering and having confidence that if we were too slow, people would get sick and people would die.
SeaTac city officials complained that the county hardly coordinated with them, except at the last moment, and the city council voted to temporarily restrict the county from opening any additional shelters within city limits.
Repeatedly, the city was ignored by King County.
It's against this tense backdrop that the county is proceeding with an audacious plan for 2021 called the Health Through Housing Initiative.
Our target is about 1,500 or more units. Get those under our control as quickly as possible, and then move people into them, and then be able to sustain that beyond the COVID emergency.
Leo Floor is the official in charge of the plan and says the county is shopping for vacant hotels to expand its network of apartment-like shelters with the goal of getting people out of tents, off of sidewalks, and into safe, clean homes.
We have every reason to believe that homelessness will get a lot worse after this pandemic unless we take bold action.
I asked him how he plans to take that bold action with barriers like the SeaTac shelter ban.
We're going to work with cities. We're not going to go into a city and say that it must be here. We're going to ask them where they could have a facility like this to serve folks from their community. Right now, we are not actively pursuing any property in a city without talking to that city's leadership first.
Floor says hotel owners are already approaching the county, offering their properties, which are struggling to fill rooms during the pandemic.
This is all funded by a 0.1% sales tax increase. The county hopes to eventually house nearly half of the chronically homeless population. In SeaTac, Ted Land, King 5 News.
There's a lot to unpack here, Jennifer.
Yeah.
I mean, on the surface, this is wonderful.
Superficial altruism.
I have little faith that this will be successful. As much as I want this to be successful.
Yes.
And the first thing that jumps out at me is if simply giving somebody shelter, and a hotel room is not apartment like. That was one thing that jumped out in there where I was just like, you're kidding me. We're going to give them apartment like. I did a hotel room. Hotel room is not apartment like. You don't have storage like for a bicycle, let's say. Like, where are you going to put like a bicycle? You don't have a kitchen. And like a mini fridge and a microwave is not a substitute for a kitchen. There is no, because of COVID right now, you can't set up like a group kitchen, a group dining area. That goes against COVID rules. So there's already just a fundamental problem in how they're positioning this. But if you don't have the wraparound services, it's set up to fail.
Yeah, no, and exactly. You're right. Make a good point. A hotel is always going to feel temporary. It's never going to feel like a home. And yeah, it like smacks of like superficial, let's slap a Band-Aid on this because we know people are pissed about what's been going on with the sweeps and everything else. So let's make this gesture to make people feel more at ease, like their tax dollars are going to some kind of good use in the context of, providing some assistance for the unhomed.
Right, because this is a region that swept Cal Anderson Park on December 18th. The city of Seattle played fast and loose with the numbers and used very, very specific language on the housing assistance that was offered on the people that were swept. What they said is that 51 people got referrals. 51 people got referrals in the 9 day, on the entire city, not Cal Anderson, the entire city for the 9 days leading up to that sweep. And then Q13 Fox ran the story that actually less than 20 people in the sweep got a referral. Everyone else that was swept had nowhere else to go. So guess where they went? They went to Miller Park.
Yeah. I know it's just, all the deceit and efforts to slap Band-Aids on things that should have some more kind of permanent solution are just, are gross. They're sad. And I don't know. I'm with you. This sounds like great in theory. And, if it were maybe properly implemented and there was some genuine, just any kind of genuineness behind it, that would be great. But, you and I were talking before the show about this potentially just being a bailout for businesses.
And the King 5 story goes, there's hotel owners lining up going, please buy my hotel because I don't have anybody in my rooms.
Exactly. So, it serves this purpose of they get to support these businesses while looking like they're doing something to address this issue when it's, again, just another Band-Aid.
The other just fundamental issue that I have with, it feels like a bailout. This whole, we're going to work with the different communities. No community, right? Because you have this preconceived notion of the unhomed. I am a major advocate for the unhomed. Anybody who watched this, nobody I think can go and, what my position was on the 16th and the 18th and then say, he doesn't want to help. I want desperately to help the unhomed, but I don't want money. I don't want one more frickin' penny wasted on boondoggles. And this just feels like a boondoggle.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's an issue. And I think the stereotypes associated with people that are unhomed are so problematic and feed into the issue. I mean, anybody, look at how many people have lost their jobs and their homes during this pandemic that were, maybe otherwise doing okay and had their head above water before. I mean, when I was in my 20s, I couch surfed and, didn't have permanent housing. And so it's not something that just impacts, people that have addiction issues or other things. And I think a lot of good could be done by disrupting those stereotypes.
And I agree. And we live in a city, Seattle has more people renting than homeowners in a city that 88% of the zoned property for residential is zoned for single family homes.
Yep. I know I live right on the periphery of the Laurelhurst neighborhood. I live in University of Washington family housing. And some of the houses around me that are just sitting empty, like multi-million-dollar homes in the Laurelhurst neighborhood,
Yeah.
It's insane.
Well, when the entry price is $800,000 for a, that's the average price for and then that average price, that's condos and homes are blended into that number. You could be an Amazon tech bro. You're still going to have to harf up $160,000 down payment.
Yeah, no, and it's interesting to me because a couple of years ago they did a story about the neighborhood that I border, and basically how it was running out like medical professionals and things like that because they couldn't afford the escalating prices of the real estate, and it was drawing in these tech professionals. So it's insane to me how that's happening because a lot of the houses that are behind me are in the millions of dollars.
We couldn't afford the house we're in now today. Not even close. Yeah. I don't even know if we could live in the town that we live in today.
Yeah. Yeah, it's insane.
So how does a new first-time buyer do this? We'll continue to track this story. Yeah. There's so many stories to track, but we'll continue to track this story. But I just don't see a happy ending to this unless you're a hotel owner about ready to get a big check from taxpayer money and have your problem solved.
Yep.
And with that, we're going to go to not technically a story, but a story. All right, Malcontent, you've been waiting for this. What I got right in here? What I got in here is shredded Donald Trump ballots. No, that's not true. But what I do have in here is all of the name slips for the winner of the black box. And I said that we would be announcing this live on the show. And because COVID, I do not have an assistant to hold the bag for me. But here, see, I'm rummaging things around here in there. And all right, I got it. The winner is right here, Joe Biden. Joe Biden's the winner of the black box. Wow, that's amazing. They all say Joe Biden. I'm just kidding. Wait a minute. Hello?
What?
Is it possible that we got it wrong? No,
Maybe.
Definitely not. We've counted it twice. I'm sure. No, Mr. President, you did not win the black box.
Oh, God.
No, sir. No, sir, you cannot bully me into giving you a black box. You don't like black people as it is. It is very true, sir. I'm ending this call now, sir. You did not win. I'm sorry. All right, the winner is, enough stalling. You can't see that slip of paper. I know. Michael Donahue. Michael, you have won the black box, and thank you for being a patron. And with that, we're going to roll the patron spot, which will explain how you can become the patron.
Congratulations, Michael.
Hi, Malcontents. I'm David, the Malcontent, and I'd like to talk to you for a moment about supporting independent media. When you support us, you help us bring the before, during, and after. You help us defend the First Amendment. You help us amplify BIPOC and LGBTQIA voices, and you help us hold leaderships at a local, state, and federal level accountable. None of this would be possible without support by viewers just like you. When you become a patron for as little as $5 a month, you help buy technology, safety equipment, and help cover travel expenses so that we can continue to bring you news that you trust. If you can't become a patron, you can do a one-time donation on Venmo, and your dollars will go to the exact same causes. With your continued support, we can continue to amplify BIPOC and LGBTQIA voices while showing the truth on what is happening in the world around us. Once again, thank you. And one of the benefits of becoming a patron at any level for the month of January is you will get first access to our documentary, Can You Hear Us?, which covers the events that happened in Seattle from June 1st to July 4. If you're thinking like, oh, I watched the New Year's Eve show, I said, no, you didn't. There's a lot more than what was in the New Year's Eve show. And there's some things in the New Year's Eve show we covered that actually aren't in the documentary because there were key events that we wanted to cover that in the interest in documentary time. So if you become a patron, you get access to when it's done. We're real close, but you'll get January access. And if not, February access. Michael, once again, congratulations. And I'll be messaging you on how to figure out all the logistics and get you your black box. And with that, we're going to jump into our next story. So in October, the International Law Enforcement Educators and Trainers Association came out with a 176-page training manual. That training manual was called Understanding Antifa and Urban Guerrilla Warfare. That document was distributed to thousands of police departments, mostly small and medium-sized police departments across the United States of America. And it is a doozy of a read.
Yeah, it's like disseminating propaganda of the state.
So we had our research team go through, a couple of people went through and read this document. We have a story on Malcontent News. And the other thing is, if you go to Malcontent News, can one of the mods or admins put a link to that news story in the chats or comments? And on the subject of mods and admins, our mods and admins don't get paid. None of us get paid. We do this out of the kindness of the bottom of our hearts. With that said, our mods and admins and research team get paid in hearts. So if you could spam those hearts, spam them up, and let people know, especially our mods and admins, that you appreciate their support. If you're watching on YouTube or you're watching on Twitch, you could just maybe like put a row of hearts or something there, and then they'll see it because they have no way to spam their hearts. But please spam those hearts. Give them love. Let them know that you appreciate the work that you're doing. And again, if you can link that up there. I'm not going to go through, I have pages of notes, and I'm not going to go through all of it, but I do want to read some of the quotes that are out of here. One of the things that jumped out at me was, one of the first things is on page 7, Black Lives Matter is akin to urban paramilitary groups who work with criminal elements supported by gangs. And the quote is, urban paramilitary groups often work with otherwise apolitical criminal elements outside of the drug arena. Criminal gangs are frequently the silent partner of urban revolutionaries.
Were they drawing this from like Latin American revolutions?
Kind of, yes. and then trying to draw the connection to what was going on in the United States.
Yeah, that's insanity. I have a field in Latin America. That's not how that works. So,
and as somebody who has intimate knowledge of the attempted revolution in Nicaragua, it's not how it worked in Nicaragua at all.
Yeah, the Sandinistas. Do we know where they derived this from, other than it just being kind of like state propaganda?
It's a great question, because there is a lot of kind of attributions and stuff where it comes from. And we're going to get into where some of this information comes from as we kind of go through some of this. But with that, there we go. And again, I'm just going to kind of like do this. And this is one of these things where we would love to have made a video, but there just was not enough time for this. Oh, page 22. Black Lives Matter, aka Antifa, has created elite sniper teams that have taken to the roofs in the United States. From experience in the Middle East and Kosovo, the use of trained, dedicated snipers with the proper rifle can be a force multiplier and considerably more effective. Terrorist groups, drug cartels, and according to classified intelligence, Antifa, BLM, and gangs in certain cities have trained, dedicated snipers.
Okay, what? Like the bad part is that people internalize this, read this, and internalize this because it's actually pretty laughable. I mean,
Right.
Yeah.
So what we reviewed in the story is that during Black Lives Matter protests, there definitely were paramilitary snipers on the roofs, including multiple arrests that happened across the United States. However, they were Three Percenters, Proud Boys, Patriot Front, and Boogaloo Boys and other right-wing aligned groups. That includes arrests in Chattanooga, armed right-wing militias right here in Omak, Washington, D.C., and in Philadelphia, where the individual in Philadelphia was taking videos of the police hanging out with the right-wing militia. The police are there like, yeah, take our pictures. And then he points the camera down and goes, yeah, and I'm up here on the roof as a sniper with my AR-15.
Yeah. And what classified information, I mean, are they talking about? Like the same kind of classified information they used to persecute people during the civil rights era? Like this, you know?
Yes.
Distant.
I mean, whenever you have the classified information, we can't tell you where we got this from.
We tell you, we'll have to kill you. Like,
yes, exactly. On page 25, Antifa-led anti-government protests will spread in tempo and violence as we move closer to the election. Because remember, this was released in October. On page 25, this is on actually multiple pages of the document. Just give them an excuse so that they may test their preparations for the coming election. Notice these riots occurs in city with governments that were favorable to them and their cause.
What?
So we can treat that as a prediction, and we can go, the prediction is totally wrong because tempo of the protest declined starting in, say, early September nationally, to the point that there are very, very few protests. And if you look even at a city like Portland or Seattle, where there are still daily protests, the number of people that are showing up, for the most part, unless there's like, you know, some key big event, it's like 30, 40, 50 people.
Yeah.
And they certainly are not elite rooftop snipers. No offense to the people on the streets.
Yeah, no. How long did they disseminate this for?
So this was disseminated for 60 days, and it was distributed to their thousands and thousands of members.
That is insane that you know, was like distributed for 60 days to that many people.
Yeah, they pulled it down because of public outrage.
Because once you allow that many people to read it, I mean, it's not something that you can go, oh, just forget all that.
It gets better, Jennifer.
I know.
It gets better. Page 70 and 74. China and Russia supporting Antifa in a full-scale hybrid war against the United States. Page 74. Both Antifa and Black Lives Matter are fronts for Russia and China.
I told you dumber after reading this, right? Like, I feel like I lost some brain cells.
I think our research team got some brain damage going through and reading this document.
I'm sorry, guys.
This is misinformation and rumors that have just been consistently disproven in the space. And counterintelligence officials, NSA, CIA, blah, 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 FBI, groups that track terrorist organizations are like, no, there's no support coming from Russia or China.
Yeah.
We have no Russian patrons or Chinese ones that I'm aware of.
The problem is that they're susceptible to that kind of, you know, information being given to them. People read
it goes on to say things like elite terrorist trained troops with Antifa have been trained in Mexico and Syria, and they will strike during the elections.
Good Lord.
I won't read the quotes in the interest of time, but of course we know, I guess they decided not to show up.
Apparently.
But it's interesting because there is some groups that have showed up after the elections that have got increasingly violent to the point that they're now attacking the police.
Oh, that's not Antifa, though, is it?
No, they're not Antifa. They're Proud Boys, Three Percenters, Patriot Front, Joey Gibson's organization, Patriot Prayer. Those people. And the funny thing is, right, we had some things in the comments when we brought this up. It's like, well, no, those are false flag people. They're not in. And it's like, we know the whole streamer community. The streamer community has been photographing your rear end since the end of May. And they know who the usual suspects are. It was the usual suspects. And then they all went to Facebook to cry about how badly they were treated, getting hit with inert pepper balls and a little pepper spray.
It's going to be a rough civil war for them then.
You were asking sources for some of this. Well, I have some sources. Trevor Loudon is considered a reliable source. So is Stephen Coughlin. Trevor Loudon lives in New Zealand. He's a writer for the Epoch Times. Interestingly, when we talk about China and Russia, where does the Epoch Times come from?
China.
China. Oh, okay. So China's not bad, or is it bad? I'm confused.
Yeah.
So,
well, from New Zealand,
Stephen
anyway.
Coughlin was hired by the Pentagon. At one time, he was the only person on the Pentagon staff for Sharia law expert. And in 2007, during the Bush administration, his views seemed so radical that people in the Pentagon called him a Christian zealot with a pen.
Yep. And he was the one that didn't have his contract renewed.
He did not have his contract renewed, and he has basically been a nobody since. Oh, and here's another one. This one you're going to love. You're going to love this one, Jennifer, because I know this one's up your alley. Project Veritas is also another good resource for information. Now, I will give Project Veritas one little bit of, a broken clock is right twice a day. Right? Their claim to fame is they broke the Acorn story, right? Yep. Drudge Report, he broke the blue dress. And then, Drudge Report, right? Now, of course, they don't like, because he doesn't like Trump, so he out. So Crenshaw can go hang out with Drudge.
Oh, okay. Well, he's got a friend now. That's good.
So there's a video that Project Veritas released on June 4, 2020, if you want a good laugh, Malcontents. I'm not going to link to it because I am not going to amplify misinformation. But if you want to go dig, you can find it. It was released on June 4th, and it was allegedly a meeting among Rose City Antifa and like a training session that was going on. And they were meeting at a bookstore. And the name of the bookstore was In Other Words. That was the name of the bookstore. If we have any malcontents who are fans of the TV show Portlandia, put a shout out in the comments down here, or if I point that way, that's where you see the comments. Put a shout out in the comments if you're familiar with In Other Words, because In Other Words isn't even a real bookstore. It's a made-up bookstore for the TV show Portlandia for a sketch about a feminist bookstore. So I guess that whole video was fake.
What? No. From Public House? They're such a reliable source. It's like using Wikipedia to write paper.
Another one where they have proof for your thing is you can go to paidliberalprotester.com. That's proof that Antifa is being financed. There's one problem with the website paidliberalprotester.com. It was created for The Daily Show, for a skit, and they actually built the website.
I was going to go there after we got off and see if I could get some extra work. Thanks a lot.
No, a matter of fact, if you want to pay a liberal protester, you can pay Jon Stewart and buy some of his books, because that's where it now goes to, is essentially or Samantha Bee, or it essentially, or Trevor Noah. It just goes to a bookstore now for Comedy Central, The Daily Show, selling the books of alumni from there. Paid liberal, you can make $1,500.
Yeah.
Still waiting for my fucking check, George. Come on, I'm a Jewish white boy. George.
Right, George Soros. He supports it all.
Oh, and on the subject of George Soros. Yes, on the subject of that, George Soros, there are a lot of anti-Semitism in this document. Now, here's another one, because they go for pages and pages, Jennifer, about how Antifa is decentralized, they have no leaders, they work in small cells. And anybody that's followed the protest movement knows that actually is, if we think of, right, there is no such thing as Antifa, but if you think of the group, this loose coalition of left-wing protesters, that's true. But then we get to page 97. And apparently Antifa has a very centralized command and control and communications network that they use in urban warfare.
Wow, that changed abruptly.
I'll read the quote on this one. During the riots, the scouts would be radio information back to their leaders, who in turn would be passing this on to their higher ups. Everybody in the chain of command, this is quote unquote out of this manual, was receiving as close to real-time intelligence as possible. But there are no leaders. There is no chain of command.
Yeah, I want to know who the leader is. Like, did they identify someone? Did they make somebody up?
Right. And when I say no leaders, like their document for 96 pages said there's no leaders. And then you get to page 97 and you get this stuff.
It sounds like one of those choose your own adventure stories.
What was that again? I was crumpling up paper.
It's like a choose your own adventure story.
It is totally like choose your own adventure story here. And then on page 110, peaceful protesters, Jennifer and David, we're just part of the violent Black Lives Matter Antifa plan. They created a spectacle of legitimacy, which was intensified as police violence escalated. They created a front line that blocked police attempts to advance when they deployed outside of the precinct, referring to Minneapolis specifically. And of course, what we've learned in Minneapolis is who burned out, who was the person that fired 12 shots into that building that forced them to evacuate? Oh, it was a right-wing boogaloo boy who's arrested.
So we're just pawns in the great BLM Antifa war?
And then here's another one. This I'll close in this last one. There's more on the website. I've not covered everything. If you go to the website, there's a huge story there where we pick apart and then provide the evidence on where, like, no, not true, and here's the proof. Page 124 was creepy. Not to mention, very clearly, Seattle and Portland did not get this memo. To gather intelligence, the manual advises to work with the homeless. And let me read with this quote. Work with the homeless. These people see and hear everything in their areas, and they don't want their homes or way of life destroyed by outsiders.
Wow.
I think the Seattle police have a different viewpoint on the unhomed. And I know I said homeless. I'm reading verbatim in the document, so don't hold it against me.
I know you've been right of this the entire time, and I feel a little bit bad about that just because, you know, so many people actually read and internalized this and probably believe the propaganda contained within this. But to any reasonable, logical person, this sounds like some weird story that you might buy on a fiction shelf in a bookstore. But there are people out there that legitimately, I'm sure, believe this.
This went to thousands of police departments, Jennifer.
Yeah.
Thousands of police departments as a training manual.
Yeah, and how many, excessive uses of forces or potential deaths is a document like this going to be responsible for?
Exactly. And that's what counterterrorism experts said, and we have those quotes in the story, that this document's going to get people killed.
Yeah, absolutely.
The other thing that is interesting is Aelita has a lot of connections to law enforcement in the state of Wisconsin, and specifically in the Kenosha area. Now, county and city officials there say that they do not use the manual, they don't get the manual, they're not members of, and nobody in their law enforcement community is active members of the organization. But one thing that I am struck when we go through this document about the viewpoints of what Antifa and Black Lives Matter is, and we go back in history to the events that happened in Kenosha, sure looks like they were operating from that the principle, because this manual didn't exist at that time, but it sure looks like they were operating on the principles that are contained in this manual.
Yeah. Just because they didn't have this document at the time doesn't mean they weren't already indoctrinating the police force with those same beliefs.
And on the subject of Kenosha, the fences are back up there because the courts will be deciding this week, likely, whether the officers will be charged in the shooting of a black man there, which started all of the events that occurred leading up to Kyle Rittenhouse and the murder of 2 people and the grievous injuring, murder of 3 people and the grievous injuring of a 4th.
Yeah. And you have to think, we were talking about this yesterday, if they're putting that kind of preparation in there, it's what we probably expect is going to happen.
Unfortunately, yes. And with that, we're going to roll our next spot.
I initially kind of came in and, said, hey, we're going to have to start moving people. And then a couple other people came in and were like, wow, this exploded fast.
Our documentary, Can You Hear Us, will be coming out February of 2021. If you want early access, you can become a patron. And I'm going to say it again. If you don't want to or you can't become one, go ahead and spam the hearts at least. If you spam the hearts, first of all, it lets our mods, admins, researchers, and editors know you love the work that they do. And it also helps amplify the feed. It helps bump it up in the algorithm, to be totally transparent. So spam those hearts and let them know that you appreciate everything that they do. And with that, Jennifer, I'm going to make an executive decision on the fly. We're not going to do story 6 tonight. We'll do story 5, and I think we're going to call it a night because we just... And with that, we're going to roll story 5. So over the weekend, Seattle Police Department made arrests of elite sniper units trained in Syria and funded by Russia and China. Let's just own the bullshit, right? Yeah. A crack elite sniper unit was arrested, funded by George Soros, getting information from Russia and trained in Syria for putting chalk art on a wall on Saturday. Saturday. It's a blur. That whole weekend's a blur. There were 2 days in a row. And then the next day, it was Friday night were the arrests. And then Saturday night's the night when it was just pouring down rain, ridiculously. And the elite sniper unit from Syria was there again with their chalk art. And I'm going to go ahead and roll the video clip that field producer Renee Rackety shot for us.
graphic being shifted. So if you want to know what's on a 16-year-old's smartphone, I can offer you that. Yeah, that's
Steamer of the Seattle Police Department. Common sense would dictate that standing in the middle of the road while wearing all back clothing is unsafe. By doing so, you're taking your safety in your own hands. I'm providing you with a warning that what you're doing is unsafe.
I'm sorry about blasting out the volume on the last bit of that clip. I could see on the meters the volume. You can turn the volume back up, Malcontents, on your computers. I'm sure you're awake now if you were still watching. By the way, I am an elite sniper. I have my sniper weapon here, soup for my family. And don't forget, this show is brought to you by Bumblebee Tuna. Bumblebee Tuna, the smoothest, most aerodynamic tuna that money can buy.
Oh, boy. Oh, you got my dog all riled up now.
Oh, do I got you?
She's on my bed, like looking all over for this squeaky toy.
Yoda could be deaf as a doornail, but he can hear the squeaky pig. So he gets all kind of like, whoa, what's that? It's very cute. So I spent a lot of time on Sunday, Jennifer, reading Bledsoe versus Furry County. It's a riveting read, and if you're hearing sarcasm in my voice, you would be correct. But it is an important read. So in Bledsoe versus Furry County, there's an issue there on chalk art. And Bledsoe is a woman. I just know her, Ms. Bledsoe. They are they have a woman's name. We'll just go with they. Had a beef with one of the a decision on a trail that was going to be built, a hiking trail. And so they were writing chalk art against some of the county commissioners outside of the courthouse. And on the day that there was going to be a hearing, they wrote all this chalk art on the right of way. The county commissioner called up and said, hey, they're out here doing chalk art. And apparently in the recordings, police dispatch was like, it's chalk. And they're like, we want you down here anyway. And then it turns out that it's like, this is going to maybe be a big scandal out there because the county commissioner pressured the district attorney to charge Bledsoe. Now, this was in 2019. This all went to federal court, Jennifer. And the court handed down a decision on October 30th on which impacts not Furry County, but all of Washington State.
Yeah.
And so the decision that they handed down is that chalk art does not fit the criminal description of malicious mischief as written by the state of Washington. But what's interesting is there is a legal gray area if you read the whole document and the court's finding. If you are writing on a public right-of-way, so if you're writing on the sidewalk or, interestingly, the road, that is considered protected First Amendment free speech. If you are writing on a building, that is not, even if it's chalk art, that is not considered First Amendment protected free speech. But if you're writing on a temporary structure, like an ecology block wall,
Yeah.
it's not exactly very clear.
Okay. First off, again, it's chalk. The water tends to wash it away. I know because there's tons of it on my sidewalk where the children play outside sometimes.
Arrest them.
Yeah, I know, right? I swear, if one of them writes on the side of my building, that's it.
Are you sure they are not a sniper unit paid by George Soros from Syria?
They could be. They start them younger all the time. Yeah, this is such an insane waste of resources, honestly. Like to spend the money to arrest people over chalk art.
And that's it. It's like nail, meet hammer, hammer, meet nail. Yeah. I put this on our Twitter. This is one of these issues where I could say it. You could be on the very far left. You could be a 3%er, right? Yeah. You should be looking at this story and going, what?
Why?
This is how taxpayer dollars are being used? This is what police... The city went on TAC 9 on Friday night because of chalk art. So what TAC 9 means is if you call in 911 because is going on, we're sorry. There are people doing chalk art on a wall. So you're going to have to wait.
Yeah. Yeah. That's insane. Insane to me that this is something that took priority.
It is completely insane to me. And you would have to imagine giving that, right, these charges aren't going to go to King County, right? So because they're misdemeanor charges. So they're going to go to the city.
Yeah.
The city's not even going to file on this because if you read Bledsoe versus Ferry County, it just looks like it's a legal landmine. And then there's another one with chalk art in another city in Washington this summer where it was Black Lives Matter chalk art on the street. And the city was coming out there and like hosing it off every day and threatening to arrest people. And the police were getting called. They were getting called by city management. And the police union, not the police union, told the city, stop. Because you're basically asking us to break the First Amendment. And you are putting the city and my police officers at great risk over chalk art. Stop it.
Yeah. So where's the but my rights people now? Like,
isn't that amazing?
Yeah. Yeah. I guess it's only their rights. But again,
it's only nail meet hammer, hammer meet nail.
Yeah. Huge waste of resources, diverting not only money and time, but people away from things that are likely far more severe than somebody writing on a wall with chalk. And for what? It's just it seems so entirely petty to me to engage in something like that when you know that it's not going to go anywhere.
Right. And by the way, I wanted to let you know, Karta has the comment of the night. She goes, let me get this straight. We're all bleeding heart liberals, and I'm paraphrasing, but we're also trained killer paramilitary ready to destroy the country.
It's our split personality, apparently.
We will continue to follow the chalk art.
That was not, we live double lives. There we go.
There it is. Yes, exactly.
Yes.
Yes, and actually, I'm very feral. This is all just an act. With Farmer Barb just had the comment, why not both? There is one other story that I do want to bring up. I'm just bringing this up off the cuff. We don't have a thing or anything, and it's a short little story. I want to go to Somerset, Massachusetts with you, metaphorically speaking, Jennifer. Somerset, Massachusetts police officer, because, we constantly, police here, right? Somerset, Massachusetts police officer gets a phone call from a Stop and Shop there. Stop and Shop's East Coast grocery chain about a couple of women who are shoplifting. They are scanning items at the self-checkout, but they've been observed not scanning all the items that they're buying. The loss prevention officer at the store confronted them in the parking lot. They went back. They scanned everything in their bags, discovered that things weren't on there. And then things took an interesting turn when the police showed up. Because when the officer showed up from the Somerset Police Department, he did issue you can't come to this store anymore. So basically a trespass warning. But when Stop and Shop and the loss prevention people were like, well, you're going to arrest them, right? And he's like, no, I'm not arresting someone for stealing groceries. Are you kidding me? And by the way, where are the groceries that they stole? And they're like, well, we already put those back on the shelves. So you know what the officer did?
What did he do?
He bought $250 Stop and Shop gift card and gave it to the two women because the two women also had their children with them. And they didn't have enough money for food, and they just wanted to have a Christmas dinner and a few items for their kids on Christmas Day. And the only thing that they stole, Jennifer, were grocery items. And that officer did that out of his own pocket.
See, that's a good deed, man. I can't.
It's a good deed, but you know what? It highlights to me what defund could be. Because if you had defund, right, then you would have an officer that might show up on a call for shoplifting in a grocery store who doesn't have handcuffs and guns and taser and pepper spray. They're a community officer, and they're going in to go, I can't help but notice you're stealing food.
Yeah.
What's going on in your life right now that you are compelled to steal food?
Exactly.
I can't feed my kids. All right, we are here to help you, and let's figure out not stealing stuff, but we're not going to charge you. We're going to help you because this whole thing. Defund the police, put that money back into the communities. And all of a sudden you get less crime.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's the thing. I mean, people are so quick to make judgments when somebody does something like that, and less concerned without, looking at the root cause of why people are engaging in these kinds of behaviors.
Mods and admins, if we had questions, I know I set up something new tonight saying when we got to the end of the show, because it's hard both for Jennifer and I because there's so many comments streaming by here. So it's kind of hard. And I try, if you ever see my eyes going over, it's because I'm trying to read the comments at the same time as I'm talking. But mods and admins, this is your moment to jump in and let us know if there were any questions and follow that format. And so we will see what there was. Courtney, that's a little bit of a personal question for Jennifer. We'll it's not terribly personal, Jennifer, but we're going to sandbag her question.
Oh, okay.
Interesting. Callie is saying that it's a Safeway policy not to go after people shoplifting food, that's their corporate policy.
Interesting.
That is interesting.
Yeah.
Oh, people are asking what your dog's name is.
Her name is Tyla, and I adopted her when she was 10 from the Humane Society in Tacoma, and forever I thought her name was Taylor, but then I looked at the paperwork like a year later, and it's actually Tyla. So it was
There's like a riot in the comments. They want to know how your date was. And then they're like, it's your fault, meaning my fault. You let it out of the bag. So I will pass the question along. There's multiple people asking, and I will just give you the option to go. I plead the fifth as my constitutional right, if you want.
I plead the fifth as my constitutional rights.
There you go, Malcontent. She pleads the fifth. We love the Constitution here at all 27 amendments.
Thank you for
Although
asking.
I still wish that our founding fathers made the Ninth Amendment a little clearer when they wrote it. Mm-hmm. And the second one. They're saying that's the only question. Whenever there's no questions, I always get worried. It's like, oh no, did we do something wrong? There's no questions. But okay, if there's no questions, then we're going to call it good. One other thing I want to do real quick here. I would like to thank, I meant to do this earlier. I would like to thank Kurt. And I would like to thank Lisa. Kurt and Lisa are 2 newest patrons. And thank you for supporting independent media. And Michael, congratulations once again. And with that, Jennifer, have a good night.
You as well.
Oh, and one other thing, Malcontents, we're going to start rebroadcasting. We actually did a test. We did it over the weekend, kind of later at night to like make sure it worked. And it worked. And we're going to rebroadcast Monday happy hour on Tuesdays at 1 o'clock. So it'll just be a recorded rebroadcast. You can't ask us shit, but you can see what everybody was commenting on. So if you came in late, right? Yeah. If you came in late or you came in the middle, it's okay. You can go back and you can watch the rebroadcast when we do it. And we also have it available on demand. And with that, Jennifer and Malcontent. Bye, Jennifer.
Bye, guys.
Malcontent News is a team of journalists, activists, and researchers with 3 key missions. A commitment to show an unfiltered view of the before, during, and after of key events, live, as it happens. To defend the First Amendment using our rights of a free press. And to amplify the voices of underrepresented individuals including Black, Indigenous, persons of color, and the LGBTQIA+ community. Our team is committed to seeking equality for all and holding those in power accountable. The easiest way to support Malcontent News is to bookmark our website at malcontentnews.com, like and follow us on Facebook, subscribe to us on YouTube, and follow us on Twitter, Twitch, Instagram, and in the Google News app. To provide financial support, you can become a patron, make a one-time donation through Venmo, or link your Twitch account to your Amazon Prime account and use your free subscription to subscribe to Malcontent News. Thank you for supporting independent journalism and for being a malcontent.
You fit the profile. You're the malcontent.
Nobody wants to hear the nonsensical ravings of a loudmouth malcontent.
Fuck you! You are the biggest hypocrite on the face of the planet.
I say that you're a terrible reporter. That's what I say.